Stand Neil Now What? Season 4, Episode 17, Single Mom Smiling with Kerri Bishop. Welcome to Stand Neil Now What? The podcast where faith meets curiosity and tradition meets today. I'm your host, Kerri and I, and each week we gather as a community to explore the beauty, depth, and mystery of the Catholic faith. Whether you're a cradle Catholic, Catholic curious, or just trying to understand why we do what we do in our faith, this space is for you. Together, we'll unpack the rich teachings of the Church, hear from voices walking the journey, and ask the big questions that help us grow, not just as individuals, but as a faithful community. So, if you've ever found yourself thinking, stand, kneel, now what? You're in the right place. Let's dive in, learn together, and grow in faith, one episode at a time. All right, welcome everyone to Stand Kneel Now What? I'm your host, Kerri and I, and on today's episode, I have Kerri Bishop from Single Mom Smiling, and it is a podcast. So welcome, Kerri.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We are excited for you to be here too. Okay, so like always, let's start with a prayer in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit, come be with us in our conversation today. Help us to remember that joy is a fruit of the Spirit and it comes directly from you. Help us in our conversation to reach one person who may need it and help guide us through the rest of the school year because we're both teachers. Please be with all of the listeners as they hear and understand, and let us be smiling as we talk today. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. All right, well, Kerri, please tell us a little bit about you and your background first. I've already mentioned that you, like me, are a teacher, and I believe you teach high school, right?
I do. That is not what I started at. Actually, I will back up. I wasn't planning to talk about this, but since we went there, let's go. Everything's on
Yeah.
the table here. So I actually teach high school math now. I hated math growing up. So I'm sure my high school teachers are like, what are you doing now? I went to college. I graduated. Let's go back even further. I started as a phys ed major. I
Mm.
switched to journalism. I graduated with elementary in Spanish. I teach high school, or not teach high school. I teach Constitution courses, or I'm a Constitution coach. And now somehow I teach high school math. It's a long, crazy journey. And sometimes I still look at the gym teachers and see them just sitting and throwing balls at kids. And I question my life choices, but here I am.
That's hilarious. I also graduated with an elementary degree and now teach high school. So it's just funny how I think, the older I get, the older kids that I want to be able to teach. So yeah, for sure.
They're not as
Oh,
scary as I thought they were when I was like
yeah.
20
I
or
mean,
whatever.
and you can be a little more like sarcastic with them, I feel like, which is good
Right.
because I am very sarcastic in nature. So
Yeah. Well, I'm from New York, so everybody here is sarcastic in
yeah.
nature. So I keep hearing things too about you're not supposed to be sarcastic, and that's like one of the things about being Catholic and being faithful, and it's supposed to be damaging, but it's such a part of our culture. It's different.
Yeah, it is for sure. Well, tell us a little bit about your faith journey and your background so that we can get to the why on why your podcast is called Single Mom Smiling.
Yeah, it's probably all going to blend together a little bit, but I grew up Catholic. We were cradle Catholic. We did a lot of, my parents are not going to be happy, but we did a lot of checking boxes on things where we went to Mass every Sunday, and that was pretty much good. I think I grew up like that. I went to a Catholic college. I was not a very Catholic college. I will put it that way. Um, and I did more checking boxes. My husband and I got married in the Catholic Church, which was wonderful. Raised our kids Catholic. We had them all baptized and everything. But again, did more checking boxes. At some point in there, I started to go deeper in my faith and think like, is there more to this and more than just checking boxes? I wouldn't say I was really a devout Catholic at that point yet, but I was starting to look deeper and try and figure things out. Um, after my fourth son was born, oh, so I should say I have five boys.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's part of the whole teaching thing and how I got to be a math teacher because I had a job, had a baby, had another job, had another baby, had another job, had another baby, and was like, oh my goodness. So I stayed home with my kids. I lost my teaching certification because in New York State we had to teach for a certain number of years or you lose our license or whatever. So despite having my master's degree, I lost my certification just because I hadn't taught and kept up with things. So, after my fourth son was born, I became youth minister of our church, and it was a part-time position, very, just basically helping out, almost volunteering at the church, and you make a little bit of money on the side.
Yeah.
Um, at that time, I got pregnant with my fifth little boy. It was a surprise pregnancy, a surprise little blessing. He's wonderful. I was very sick with the pregnancy, so I was on a home IV. The home IV eventually needed to be given as a PICC line. We were told he was going to have probably lifelong health issues or intellectual issues, some health issues and things. Um, and at that point, well, my husband and I renewed our vows on Valentine's Day. The baby was due in August. And on Mother's Day, 2009, my husband suddenly announced he was leaving.
Mm.
So he moved out 1 week later. I was basically a stay-at-home mom now with 4 and 5 babies when you count the little one growing inside me.
Yeah.
So it was really a extremely difficult situation. He left out of the blue. Like I said, we had just renewed our vows, so we had no idea this was coming. There was no sign of it. It's something you always go back and question, like, oh, was there a sign? Was there not? What? And it's interesting. This is going off on a tangent too, but I don't know how God speaks to us always. Sometimes I hear him so clearly, and sometimes I'm thinking like, is this real or is it not? But I remember we had love rose bushes. They were called love rose bushes. Like I bought them probably at like Walmart or somewhere.
Yeah.
We didn't have a whole lot of money at the time, but we were building our own house, and I just wanted rose bushes, and I loved that they were called love bushes. So I put them on each side of our front steps, and mine grew like wild and out of control on my side, and my husband's side died. And I was like, God, is that a sign? Like you start looking back and
Yeah.
thinking, a few weeks before he left, my stone fell out of my engagement ring at a soccer field, and I never found the stone again. So there were some that I look back and think like, oh my gosh, like I don't believe in signs, but I do believe in signs. Like, how do
Yeah.
I make this work? So all of that was making me question my faith. Like, what is God trying to tell me? How do we do this? Um, with my husband leaving, I will never say I lost my faith in God. Excuse me, sorry.
It's if you know teachers, you know that we talk a lot.
I know, like try and
You
not
get to
do
the
that.
end of the day and it's yeah, for sure. No, don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
Yeah, I was trying to hold that in, but okay. So I wouldn't say I lost my faith in God because I didn't. Absolutely. I knew he was there. I knew he was out there. I just didn't know if the Catholic Church was for me. I was looking at other places like the Catholic I didn't feel very supported in the Catholic Church. I'll put it that way. And I just didn't understand what God was doing in our lives. Like how we went to church every Sunday. We said prayers at dinner every night. We literally held hands as we fell asleep every night. How in a week is he from being who I think is my best friend and everything to
Yeah.
completely gone? And I don't mean to say like we had a perfect relationship or a perfect marriage because I made mistakes, he made mistakes, we had lots of ups and downs. He had said that last year was our best year ever, because he thought of me more as a friend than as a wife at this point. But I was like, but I'm pregnant and not all my friends are getting me pregnant.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a very confusing time. My oldest son was 11 at the time, and he had just finished sixth grade CCD. And in sixth grade CCD here, they read the Old Testament. And he came to me and said, Mom, you're going to be like Job. We're going to be like Job. It's going to be like that. God is going to restore this somehow. And again, he probably knew more of the Bible than I did at that point. And I was like, who is Job? What are we? I had some vague idea, but not really knowing the story and everything. So actually, I had decided that we would name our youngest son, if he had been a girl, Kezia, which is the youngest son of Job, also.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, God, you're going to restore this. I will not lose faith in you. But I did question my Catholic faith and went to a great non-denominational church. And I still love people there. I still think it was wonderful. But the pastor said, first of all, that I would be one of 70 so 70% of the congregation was former Catholics or were former Catholics. And this for New York is not a Texas-sized church, but for New York,
Yeah.
this was a big church. It had three campuses. And, so I was like, well, am I going to be one of the 70% former Catholics, or am I going to figure out and stay in the Catholic faith? I really had to struggle with that a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and I decided that it wasn't so much what that church had, but what they were missing. Like they didn't have, and I said this to the pastor, and he said, "Oh, like we don't stand up and profess our beliefs every week." And I was like, "Oh, that's what we do when we say the Nicene Creed. That's what the Apostles' Creed is." I hadn't really thought about that. And I was thinking, well, the kids don't know the Lord's Prayer. How do we have Christians who don't know the Lord's Prayer? And,
Mhm.
what does the Eucharist mean? What is confession? Who are the saints? Like what I hadn't even gotten into Mary yet. That was a different, that took more time. But as I questioned all of this, I found like the Catholic Church had more of the fullness of all that, where I was like, oh, that's why we do things. That's why, and that led me back to Catholicism.
Mm.
So it
That's
was a journey.
beautiful. Yeah, that's a really good journey. And so I know for everybody, starting a podcast comes with its like you have a mission, and sometimes it moves and changes as God works through you. So why did you start the Single Mom Smiling podcast? Because I think it's very needed. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's needed from a Catholic standpoint too. So tell us more about your mission to start your podcast.
Yeah, well, about 2 years, I started blogging about 2.5 years after my husband left. So before podcasting was a thing, I don't even think there was podcasting back in that day. But when my husband left, a woman from town, we live in a small town and everybody kind of knows everything. So I didn't know this woman personally, but we kind of had mutual friends and whatever. But she showed up on my doorstep and just sobbing. And she said, "My husband is having an affair. Somebody told me you would be able to give me some advice and help me out." And I was like, my
Oh,
life is a hot mess right now. I can't help you, but I want to be able to figure out what this is. And this is one of those times also, another time a little bit earlier than that, I very clearly heard God's voice say, "You're the first in your circle of friends, but you're not going to be the last to go through this." Like, and I thought, oh my gosh, he's right. And unfortunately, he was right. I've seen other friends have their marriages fall apart too, which is it's devastating at any stage.
mhm.
Um, it's definitely not God's plan. So from there, I got my life coaching certification. I got financial coaching certification. I started blogging on the Single Mom Smiling website. I ended up talking to women from around the world, which was amazing. I had women contact me and saying, my boyfriend wants me to have an abortion. What do I do? And I was like, nope, let's go. You got this. So I
Yeah.
started getting, not a ton of people, but people from all over the world would send me pictures of their babies or something. And it just was so touching to me. So it was wonderful. Um, I started podcasting. So I guess I put the blogging aside for a while. I have to go back and clean up that website a little bit. It's a little old and outdated, but I put that aside when I got the so-called real job and started teaching high school math. I couldn't maintain five boys, high school math, moving out for a house and a blog also.
Yeah.
So I put that on the side. You
I
probably
mean,
understand. I have way too many
so
balls here.
easy. Yes. Well, what's funny is you talk about blogging. Sorry to interrupt, but like
Yeah.
that's how kind of I started too. I started blogging right before my daughter was born. And then once again, because it was like hard managing teaching, and what I taught was very niche almost. I taught English as a second language. And so like keeping up with that, and then being a good wife, and then being a mom, and like blogging like was totally pushed to the side. And it was once again I was like trying to help people, and it was part of my like I needed a creative outlet, but you
Right.
know we all we all have to do what we have to do to not just survive but thrive sometimes. So it's just funny that we have that connection.
Absolutely. And I think there's something cathartic and something healing about writing and putting things out. Like
Mhm.
not everything I write goes into a public domain here. It's, a lot of it's kept in my private journals or things in my Bible journals and things like that. But I think it's very healing when you put words to paper and you can actually think, oh, that's why I'm starting to feel that or see the pattern over time and things. So even as a coach and stuff, I think that's important to take a few minutes, even if it's 5 minutes. I try to do 5 or 10 minutes every day. If I can do more, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
have to say I don't always do that, but I think I feel better about myself when I can process it. It's almost like an examination of conscience too. So I'm putting things down there and I'm noticing, oh, this is what I have to be grateful for. These are the gifts that God gave me on this day where I can be tempted to find all negative. I have to find positive. Um, yeah. So, and then the podcasting kind of came out because I heard it was easier. I heard it was something that I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that. I love writing, so I kind of sometimes like, oh, I should just go back. Um, but I think that it's very valuable. I know for me as a single mom and being busy and a teacher and everything else, I love listening to podcasts in a car where I'm not going to sit and read a blog. So I hope that this is reaching more people
Yeah.
and, you know, touching hearts and giving women, although I do have some men also who write, um, just inspiration. Like there is a plan for you. God still loves you. Your marriage fell apart, or you got pregnant out of wedlock, or something happened. But this is a new step forward. It's not a whew, it's not a sit down, never get up again kind of thing.
Yeah. So, what are some topics that are covered on your podcast? Just you've kind of mentioned, um, that God has a plan and the abortion topics, but do you talk about like going through the grief of, a door closing or um, sometimes did your youngest son end up having medical issues after he was born or did he come out like perfect? I just talked to another like a grief coach about like sometimes you have to grieve what you thought your kids were going to be or you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I went that route too. So, what are some topics that get discussed?
Yeah. So first of all, my son is absolutely amazing. He could do a little bit better academically in like algebra 2 as the algebra teacher is talking like, oh, what is that? What is that? But no, I'm just kidding. He's not gonna be happy with me. Um, but he is the goalie of his soccer team. They went so far this year. They're not quite to states, but they did amazing. And he was only a sophomore as that happened. Now he's a junior. So 2 years on the varsity soccer team, being absolutely incredible. Really, and the best, most kind-hearted, most responsible, like just a great kid. Um, so he's wonderful. As far as I'm trying to think, what was the other question? I lost it for a
No,
second.
no, you're fine. So, what are some topics that get covered on your
Topics.
podcast? Yeah.
Thank you. I want to make sure I got my son, and then I went off on a tangent about his academics and his math. So, um, topics that got covered. Yes, we do cover grief. I was doing 2 podcasts a week, which was actually a little bit much for me, especially because I want to get into some other things too. It was going a gospel reflection. So if you look through some of my older episodes, you'll find a Monday gospel reflection based on the day before and how it applies to mostly single parents. It can be trauma based also. I find a lot of single moms have also been through previous trauma. Also, there's that cyclical pattern to it. So
Mhm.
we talk about child abuse, victimization, getting over things, resiliency, overcomer skills. Now, what I'm switching over to, though, is not only that, but looking at the spiritual aspect because there's such an oppression and such a we're not in this world alone. What we see here is not all there is.
Mhm.
So I'm really trying to look at things and say, okay, you're struggling with this, but is that something that God would put on you, or is that something? And God does allow us to go through hard times. I don't think I would have the faith I do today if I was still with my husband. So,
Yeah.
I look back and I think, well, but my kids would have had better lives. And, if they had, and it's very easy to compare your family to the best family at church and be like, oh, I wish that dad would teach my boys how to be men and how to have faith and to whatever. But we're comparing things that are not comparable. That's not their journey. And I have to believe that God has a plan for them. God has a plan for me. He has a plan for each of my listeners. And we're looking at things. So not just one topic or anything. Like right now, I'm doing a episode on self-love will come out and how to
Oh.
love yourself because in these situations, it's very hard to, well, I've been left by the one person who said he would love me forever, and then especially when you put it into context of having past abuse issues or past boyfriends that were whatever, this just piles up on itself. And we do have to love ourselves. In fact, St. Thomas Aquinas says you have to love yourself in order to love God and love your neighbor. Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. So all of this self love is really important. And what does that mean? Because it's so hard for somebody who's been through such trauma and betrayal, abandonment, to find out what love means.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, especially because when we're recording now, when this releases, it may not be Lent anymore, but when we're recording, my Lenten promise this year, and the only thing I'm focusing on is no more negative self-talk, because I have noticed that that does affect my relationship with Christ. And I don't always like, I like to portray that, oh, I'm a daughter of God, but sometimes I don't internalize that.
Mhm.
And without loving myself, I know that I am dipping from an empty bucket when I try to love others. And it's just, it's once again, you said it was like a cyclical thing that you have to work around. So I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I also think when you put things out there, and I'm huge on this too, because I do the same thing, that negative self-talk or constantly apologizing for something. That's another symptom or sign of abuse and sign of whatever, trauma. But I think when you put things out there like that, when you're talking negatively, it's going to somewhere. It doesn't just sit in the air and hang. There's, again, if we believe in the spiritual realm, if we're not talking to Jesus, then who are those words going to? And
Yeah.
we have to think about that, because if we believe we're not alone here, then other people are hearing what we say, or other beings, other spirits and things are hearing what we say. And those demons can take that and apply it later and, use it on your kids, or use it on a neighbor, or use it, in a way that you hadn't expected later. It might come up, 10 years down the line. And you just give them power. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So we have to be very careful with the words we say. I also think too, one of the things I'm looking into and big on is directed silence. So for abuse victims or people to sit in silence, which I think is so important in adoration or prayer or any of that kind of thing, it can be hard because you start hearing those negative voices and you start hearing things, and that again, ruminating it through negativity isn't good. So you have to direct your silence. And sometimes that means practice. You can't spend just an hour in adoration, wake up one day and be like, oh, I'm going to go sit in adoration for an
Yeah.
hour. It might be, I can sit in my living room for, maybe it's 30 seconds at the beginning. And then you build up to going to adoration, sitting for an hour. But you have to have that directed silence. It can't just be blank,
Yeah.
because I believe sometimes that evil comes back and it haunts people that have been through hard times. So
Mm, that's so true. So true. Okay, so on one of the things that you sent me, you said that you researched the resilient mindset and positive psychology that comes from the Green Berets and the Navy SEALs. First, let's just talk about what those two things are, and then I'll get into the next part of the question.
Okay, so resilience, positive psychology, overcomer mindset, it goes by different terms. For me, overcomer mindset just means, hey, I'm going to look at this hard thing, and instead of just, so there's a couple of different things that you could do. You could get a hard thing happen to you in life and just fall apart completely.
Mhm.
And that, obviously we can all agree that's no good. What I used to do is I get this hard thing and I'm going to push through. That's part of my math certification. I'm just going to beat my head against the wall until I get to it. And that's better than just falling apart completely, but it's exhausting, and it exhausts not just you, it's everybody around you too.
Mhm.
So I see that with my kids. You know what? We did great. My kids are all amazing young men, but I wish I could go back and be like, okay, you know what? We're going to be gentler rather than just push through everything. So for me, that positive psychology, the resilience, all of that is kind of built into that self-love idea of let's be gentle. Let's look and see, okay, instead of just charging through for the first exit and, trying to find the off ramp to this difficulty as soon as possible, let's take a look at the wider picture. Let's put it on, the Green Berets taught us, like, put things on a lazy Susan, spin it from a different angle. Like, if you're sitting at a restaurant,
Yeah.
your lazy Susan has your condiments on it, but when you spin it, same condiments are there, but it looks different from a different perspective.
Mhm.
So taking that idea and just saying, all right, God, here's my issue. Here's what I'm dealing with. I'm going to put this on a lazy Susan. I'm going to spin it from different angles, see which now, instead of just charging right in, what's the best approach? How do we make through this? And then also finding the good in it, because God gives you things that are difficult to strengthen you. Like, this can be a good in your life. How is that going to where's the blessing in this? And, how are you going to grow from this rather than just beat yourself up and make it through the day.
Yeah. Well, and I love this. You can tell that you have some, like life coaching background, because one of the things that I've really learned from interviewing people that have that background is that not enough people sit with their emotions, because emotions are really hard, and you just want to get through it and go, okay, I'm done feeling sad, and then you put it in a box and you put it away, and you don't want to deal with it anymore. But yeah, I've interviewed several amazing women that are like, no, like we have to be in our emotions sometimes, and we have to persevere through it, instead of just wanting to box it up and saying, see you later, I don't want to deal with this right now.
Yeah, one of the most common questions I get is when is this pain going to be over? Like some version of that. Like, I want a date. I was married for 5 years and 3 months. Give me a date when this will, whatever. And pain doesn't work like that. It works, it comes and goes. I can be doing great one day and the next day kind of backslide a little bit. So all of this resilience is saying, I'm not going to let that backslide define me. I'm not going to let that backslide keep pulling me back. I'm going to put protections in place to pull myself back up. Almost like if I'm, doing mountain climbing and you have a harness and you have ways to pull yourself back up. So when you slide back a little bit, because it's inevitable that you're going to have those backslides at times. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you've kind of already mentioned it, but so you use the resiliency and the positive psychology in your everyday life. So how does it also help your overall mission, which you kind of have already answered, like especially with it helping people to persevere through their breakups or their divorces or that kind of a thing. So how else would you use this in your life?
well, I think one of the things the way I got the training with the Green Berets and the Navy SEALs was there was a challenge online. It was a 60-day challenge, multiple domains to it. I won't go into all the aspects of it, but one of the things is it was called the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge.
Hmm.
So you can imagine if it was put together by Green Berets and Navy SEALs, this is going to be deliberately discomfortable. Uh, and they took their lessons from combat to teach us how to apply these lessons to real life, either businesses that people are building or relationships or just sitting by yourself and you're like remembering, because a lot of them have been through some serious trauma also. And this is how did they overcome this? So using those skills to help people is really important to me. So I think that that's one of the things that I try to do is just incorporate some of that, showing people like this there are good examples. I think another thing too, I know when I joined that group, I was very, I don't know if reluctant is the right word, but I kind of, again, feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough. These guys have done amazing things and I haven't. And, how do I fit in with that group? I'm just going to kind of stay in the background and not be noticed. But that's not what God is calling us to. And these men in this group were so generous with their knowledge and they were so good. And that's what I want to bring to the world too. Like they have knowledge that they gave to me. Now I feel like I'm a bridge. I have to give it to someone else too.
Mhm.
And when you know that you're not alone in something, it's a huge, like, just relief off your shoulders. It's just, okay, I can do this. And there are other people that have community with me. There's fellowship. I'm not the only one in this situation because that's again the way the devil wants to isolate us, right? He wants to make you feel like you're the only one in this situation. Nobody else will ever understand you. And these are the things that women deal with and men too deal with when they're in these difficult situations.
Yeah. So, what is the most important thing for someone to know if they are going through, um, maybe a divorce, or they suddenly become a single mom, like like you had to become? So, what do you want people to take away from that? Like, what do you want them to leave with? I think I know, like, just if it was me personally, that shame doesn't come from God. And but I would love to know what your thoughts on that are.
You know what? Like I said, I'm doing the self-love program right now. So I think that's one of the things is there is love for you. There is love in you that you're not defined by your mistakes or not defined by even worse, somebody else's mistakes. I almost feel like with our own mistakes, we can take accountability for that. We can look and say, oh, well, I did this in the past, so I can change this in the future. But when it's somebody else's mistake projected onto you, that makes it almost harder sometimes to say, well, there's nothing I can do. My husband just left. I can change a little bit of my relationship, but I know I struggled with, did he change and I missed it, or did I miss the signs when we were younger? Like, and that's such a sweep the sweep the rug out from under you kind of thing. So I would say that, digging into silence, digging into prayer, I guess there's so many things. There's so many things. Um, Practical things, just like reaching out to people, um, writing a list of what you have to get done each day, because when you're in that mindset, it's so hard to keep hold of anything. It's just that trauma is there, and you lose things, you forget things, things go off your schedule. There's so many things I know, especially with, I had five boys. I know some moms that have kids with disabilities, and
Mhm.
that's a whole nother stress. So having a list of written things down, like what do you have to get done each day, giving important information like phone numbers or medications or things like that, banking information. And then as far as, emotionally, it's really about sitting and knowing that you're worth taking a couple of minutes each day and saying, everything else is going crazy. I'm going to sit, and the laundry is going to pile up. The bills might get unpaid for a day or two. I'm a financial coach, so I'm kind of cringing a little bit about that. But, you know, as long as it's only a day or two, things happen,
Yeah.
but you will never get that time back with you and your children.
Mm.
So, more than anything, it's turning to God, not losing faith in Him. Just keep asking Him to reveal Himself, because there will be many days where you don't see Him working in this mess, and that you think, well, has He abandoned me? Am I not good enough? Or my kids, what do I do with them? And it's literally just, okay, God, this is so much bigger than what I am dealing with. Like, I can't fight this battle. It's not about fighting my ex. It's not about fighting the court system. It's not about fighting creditors. It's not about fighting for my mortgage or my house or a job or any of that. It's so much bigger, because it's everything. And God, that's your responsibility. I am turning this over to you. And just
Yeah.
continuously, whether you feel it or not, just continuously asking the Holy Spirit to infuse you with love, and love for God, love for your children, love for your neighbor, and even love for your ex, as hard as that is.
Yeah. Oh, I imagine that's really hard. So at the beginning, you had talked kind of about how you didn't feel super supported by your church community or the Catholic community. What are practical ways that if we have a family that we see like struggling or that is going through this process, what are practical ways that we can help them as a person in that community?
Great question, and I'm so glad you asked it. I know that with me, there were so many things that I needed to do, and it was so overwhelming. We were losing our house in foreclosure. I couldn't find housing. I went to a couple places, and they said um, that they couldn't legally not give me housing if I qualified for it, but I would put the garbage cans on the wrong side of the street, and they would evict me later, and I would just be in the same situation again. So it was the trauma, that trying to figure everything out. It was just so much trying to get kids from one practice to another. Four of my boys were within 6 years of each other, so we were just far enough apart that every kid was on a different team, but not far close enough. So there were so many things going on, court cases, going to court, trying to go back to school and work, and all the different things. And people would say, what can we do for you? And it was so overwhelming. Like, I don't even know. I can't put together a sentence to tell you what I need. I need literally everything right now. And everything also makes me feel so so needy and so
Yeah.
weak. So that was another thing. Like, I need everything, but I don't want to ask for everything. I'm so ashamed. I don't know. We talk a lot about in my Catholic single moms group. I have a Catholic single moms group on Facebook, also of almost 1,000 women. And some of the things we'll talk about is the scarlet letter D of divorce, where we feel like we're branded and people look at us differently. So if you're in this situation, you're able to ask somebody if they need help. I know one of the things that a woman did for me was she just said, I am free every Wednesday from, I forget, like 2 to 4 or something, and I'm going to take your newborn and let you get 2 hours of sleep or whatever it is. I don't think I ever slept during that time, but 2 hours where I wasn't nursing him, where it was just a 2 hour period. And I knew every week, I was like, at first it was so hard to hand him over. But when you have your kids 24/7 and you're in this crisis mode, just knowing I had a 2 hour window once a week was like, oh my gosh, that was such a godsend to me. So when people did things and brought things to us, that was really helpful. I think also part of it was people gave us tons of clothes, and that got overwhelming sometimes. So
Mhm.
saying, hey, I have this. But even there, I was afraid to say no to people too sometimes. So it was like, yeah, I'll take it. But it was like, oh my gosh, I can't handle more stuff. So it really depends on the situation. And I think one of the biggest things is just being there and letting somebody talk to you. Uh, I know one of the things I felt was that a lot of people turned away from us when this happened, and they didn't have
Yeah.
people who I maybe not my best friends, but people who were like acquaintances and things kind of just looked the other way and stopped like communicating with me. And I finally grabbed one of the women and said, like, a friend of mine, this is not an acquaintance, so one of my friends, and I said, what happened? Like, my Catholic friends aren't even talking to me. And she just said that what she thought was that people saw our relationship because nobody saw this coming. We were PTA mom, I was youth minister, all the stuff we were in the community. Nobody saw it coming. And they thought that when they looked at our relationship and saw what happened with us, that they realized that it could happen to them also. So I think it's a combination of if you're in the church, being proactive, financial support is always great, but it's really the emotional and the spiritual support. And the single moms also have a responsibility. We have to understand that people don't know how to handle this. It's not that they're judging us as much as we feel like it. Sometimes we internalize, oh, they're judging. And sometimes they're just like, they're so confused too that people
Yeah.
don't know how to help. I also think our church officials have to understand that this is not a problem that's solved by annulments. A lot of times they're just like, well, get the divorce, get the annulment, and everything goes on. But this is a lifetime wound. My youngest is 16. My husband's been gone for almost 17 years. We are still dealing with the fallout of this, and my
Yeah.
kids will deal with it for the next 50. So this is not a get an annulment kind of thing. We need our pastors and our priests and our bishops to fight for marriage and family. This is not something that it cannot just be swept under the rug. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of confusion around the annulment system too, and what is a valid annulment, what's not, what's a valid marriage, what's not. So real pastoral care from our bishops and priests need to be, that's so important.
Yeah, I would agree because I am in several Facebook groups for Catholic women, and it's, I did this, this, and this, and now I'm remarried, and and there's a lot of confusion, even, as a convert when we came in and we weren't, annulments weren't really discussed, which, my husband and I came in together, but that wasn't discussed. And the importance of convalidation wasn't discussed. And we just set a convalidation date and like, here we go.
Oh.
So I would 100% agree. Okay, so where can the listeners of my podcast find you and your podcast and your groups? Just list them all out and then they will be in the show notes for when this show airs.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So everything is Single Mom Smiling. So Facebook, Single Mom Smiling. My website is singlemomsmiling.com. I got to fix that a little bit. The podcast is Single Mom Smiling. My Catholic Facebook group is Catholic Single Moms on Facebook. And if they want to reach me by email and find out some of the courses and things I have offering and coaching that I do and stuff, it is Kerri, Kerri, at singlemomsmiling.com.
Perfect. I love it. And before I let you go, I have been ending all of my episodes this season with this question. So, what is something that you are looking forward to? And it can be anything, just like in your personal life or spiritual life or a vacation coming up. It can be anything you want. So, just one thing or multiple things, because I like to hear what's going on in people's lives that you're looking forward to.
So I don't know exactly. There's so much to look forward to. Like life is an adventure. A couple of years ago with COVID and all the hating on the country and hating law enforcement, military and all that, I decided when my kids were gone, I would jump in my minivan and drive across the country and just stop and record people videos about what is good about America, what they love about America. And people would be like, well, I can tell you three things that are bad, but, and I was like, no, we're not talking about the bad until we build on a foundation of good. So I think I may do something like that again this summer and just get out and talk to people. What's good about the Catholic Church? What's good about family? What's good about marriage? What's good about America? We have to build on a foundation of good. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm really digging into the spiritual warfare aspect of what's happening with marriage and family. Estrangement, LGBT issues, addiction, pornography, all of the stuff that is the side effects of single parenting. And I know that affects everybody. So it's not just a single parenting website anymore, or a podcast, I should say, anymore. But looking into, so I have the negative, the dark side of the spiritual warfare, and then also the good side of, and I think that's the way life is. We all look for balance. But for
Mhm.
me, it's less about balance and more about I'm going to go all in on this when I'm doing that. And I'm going to be all in on that when I'm doing the other thing. And I'm going to be present in whatever I do and um, a little less multitasking and just be present and being whatever it is that I'm into at the
Yeah,
moment.
I love that. Well, thank you, Kerri, for coming on. And like I said, we'll list everything in the show notes so listeners can find you and all of the good work that you're doing. And listeners, we will talk to you next week.
Thank you so much.